Hey, this is Sydney, and I am here to talk us through the astrological weather of October 1st through the 7th of 2025. That is going to be Wednesday through Tuesday, and I always record on the Tuesday just the day before. So I'm recording this on September 30th around 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And all of the charts that will be on the screen are at 0 Aries so that you can orient yourself into the chart. And everything will also be timestamped so that you can find yourself wherever you need to be, especially if you find this a little bit later. My website is open for scheduling, and if you don't see anything on the schedule, because I have a very limited appointments open for that time frame, if you need something at a different time, you can always email and see if we can accommodate you. All right, so without further ado, let's orient ourselves into the week. So let's orient ourselves into time and space just so we kind of have a lay of the land, what's kind of going on. We do have Venus inner fall in Virgo. She's very close to the South Node this week, so we'll get to that as we get into when that aspect perfects. But just know that like Venus is kind of not in the greatest situation right now. While I think Venus and Virgo can be very, very resourceful, very detail oriented, can also be very self-critical and also critical of others. The being with the South Node can be a little bit of a challenge for her as well. So she's like extra challenged this week. We have Mars at home, very, very powerful in Scorpio. Mars is loving it, right? I kind of think of like Mars and Scorpio as this kind of like sniper energy, right? It's very silent. It's in a silent sign. He works in secret or undercover or in quiet, just in quiet, and is very determined, stubborn, has a way of like almost an analysis of trying to know and knows exactly what it needs to do to be effective. This is very effective Mars. We have Pluto and Uranus still very, very close within minutes of their trine. Pluto in Aquarius to Uranus in Gemini, and this is they're both in retrograde right now, and so we are seeing these shifts in thinking and processing and communicating that is also having to do with like how people in society can like congregate and be together. There's definitely stuff around these new ways of thinking, being, communicating that is transforming, that word for Pluto, right? Transforming, changing on a deeper molecular level, the ways that we are able to communicate, how we are able to commune as community together, how we're able to be together. We also still have Neptune is in Aries right now. He's going to go back into Pisces. He's very slow right now. He's anoretic. He is also on a world point. So there's lots of kind of data about the vision, right? The pioneering vision that certainly various governments are having for us, for better or for worse. And it's playing in this kind of sextile that's happening between Pluto and Neptune and Uranus. So these are like big, slow outer planets that are really talking about like this like deeper systemic change that also has to do with our dream, our vision, governments and structures and technology. Saturn's in play here too. Saturn is retrograde. Saturn is now kind of leaving that very close conjunction, almost perfect conjunction with Neptune, right? Because it's retrograded back into Pisces. So we're watching, more stuff with water is going to come up, especially when Neptune retrogrades back into Pisces. We're probably going to see some more water news, water issues, water tragedies happen as well. And then let's see, Libra season just started. We are in fall now. And Jupiter is still happy as a clam uh, in Cancer right now, though maybe not as happy today because as I'm recording this, the moon is in Capricorn. So it's still great, but it's not too terrible. So that is our orientation. We have Venus and Mercury and a mutual reception. And I think it's actually more of a mutual generosity because they're not an aspect to each other, but they are in each other's signs. So I think if they work really hard, we can get maybe a little bit of a glimmer of what Venus and Libra could feel like with a Mercury in Virgo, though really Mercury is in Libra, really trying to communicate and have communicate in some sort of conversational way with other people, really trying to kind of reach across the aisle and find some fairness and balance for better or for worse, right? You know, I like Mercury being in a sign of communication, though he's not at home there, he's not uncomfortable there. We do have a fair amount we don't really have any Earth in the sky right now, which I think is, well, we have Venus and Virgo in the sky, which is Earth, but that's the only Earth we have. We just have a lot of water and fire. And so I think that really kind of riles up the emotions. And yeah, so let's go through the week day by day. And as a reminder, these things are timestamped. So if you want to just listen to a particular day, I got you. October 1st, happy October. It's pumpkin season, guys. It is Wednesday, Mercury's day. Mercury is in Libra, wanting to have and engage in conversation, maybe even across the aisle, to understand other people's point of views, to take in other perspectives, has the goal of maybe harmonizing or finding balance and equilibrium through conversation. Through pleasantries. This is the sign of a diplomat. And in fact, I would say that Mercury in Libra is a very diplomatic Mercury, trying to be fair and balanced all the time. Can also be a little bit wishy-washy, right? A little bit waffling, but I digress. All right, so 4:34 a.m. we have the moon square Chiron. So if we're waking up going into this day feeling a little bit raw, a little bit emotionally sensitive, know that that's definitely where we're at for this day. The moon is at 25 degrees Capricorn. He's wrapping up his time in Capricorn, which can feel kind of isolated, a little bit of fuck it, I'll do it myself. So that sensitivity can probably feel pretty ouchy, I gotta say. We do get the moon is going to sextile Saturn at 8:33 a.m. Now, this really also feels like, F it, I'm gonna do it myself. I'm gonna get it done. I'm gonna push it out the door. It's a great working energy for just completing the task, right? It can also feel a little bit of an emotional resolve, feeling kind of emotionally settled. It feels kind of like want energy, but not so in a crisis sort of way, but just kind of in the gentle resolve that everything's a little bit sad and I got to do it anyways. That's kind of how I feel that moon in Capricorn sextile a watery Saturn retrograde in Pisces is just kind of there's a little bit of an Eeyore-ness to it all. So if we wake up feeling a little gloomy, but also determined to just make the best of it, I think that's what makes best sense for this. The moon is going to enter Aquarius at 12:51 p.m. So with that sextile to Saturn earlier at 8:33, the moon is going to go void, and then it's going to come out of void when the moon goes into Aquarius. So we have maybe a 4-hour period of time where the moon is void. So don't start any brand new endeavors, just kind of finish up the work, which really makes sense with the moon sextile Saturn. The moon's going to go into Aquarius, and so now we're talking about let's detach from the feelings that we had. Let's really think about maybe others, or making our hopes and wishes to good use. there could be, our minds turn to, or our emotions, how we feel, we kind of turn towards being a little bit more of a humanitarian, right? But also, this can be a little bit of like literally detaching, a little bit of a shutdown. So hopefully you'll use it in like a good way instead of the kind of like, fuck it, I'm out kind of way. It's like if you're feeling really a lot of turmoil, right? The moon in Aquarius comes in and says, like, actually, let's be a little bit more pragmatic about this here. Like, we can just maybe distance ourselves. Maybe we can kind of step outside of ourselves and kind of take in, like, does this all need to be like this? It's like almost a little bit lighter, but not quite, because it's still Aquarius, it's still fixed sign. We are going to get a sesqui square with Venus from the moon at 1:02 p.m. So there could be something around relationships feeling a little bit not so great. There could be a little bit of like criticism that we're feeling either coming to us, or, that we are projecting onto somebody else. It's just like relationships not super settled, values, money, all of the Venusian things, maybe having a little bit of argument with like the work that you're trying to do. It just doesn't feel quite right. We are going to get a moon sextile Neptune, and that is going to happen at 1:50 p.m. And this is nice because it's kind of like this dreamy, I think, like feels very future forward energy. So it's almost like we go through what we go through in the morning, and then we kind of are able to be a little bit more inspired here, which is really quite nice. It's an inspirational energy. I hope we all kind of ride it, engage with some art, make some art, sit in contemplation about how you want your future to go. We're going to get Mercury square Jupiter at 1:59 p.m. Now, it's interesting when I think about the sextile to Neptune, where we're like thinking about like the vision, we're thinking about like our future plans and how we want to like, maybe be like kind of a spiritual warrior for ourselves, or, something like that. And then we get Mercury square Jupiter, which really says like, be careful about overpromising on what you say. Now, the nice thing is that when Mercury comes and squares up with Jupiter, Jupiter is considered the great benefic. He's in a good sign. He's doing pretty great. He's in a dominating square to Mercury. And so I think that if we are a little bit more conservative with the things and the sorts of promises that we are making, maybe towards other people in conversation, this could be a really great time to kind of take some action on some of our vision that we have, or being able to put into use, our right and left brain, right? That really all has to do with like maybe feeling comfort and safety inside of our relationships and in union. So the cardinal square, we're going to want to take some action, but it's best just to like be a little bit conservative and not overdo it. We have Moon trine Uranus, and that is going to happen at 3:05 p.m. So we could have some new surprising developments in our emotional nature. We could take on a new habit. We could be feeling pretty inspired. We could also be feeling a little bit like intuitive, or like plugged in. I think like plugged into the like technological and communicative matrix is kind of how it feels to me. Like, especially because the moon is in Aquarius and Uranus is in Gemini. Like, these are signs of communication. These are signs of, processing and thinking. And so it's like maybe we're a little bit like tuned in, like really like kind of emotionally tuned in, but not in such a depth sort of way that like renders us incapable of making whatever changes we need to make. There's almost like a space age kind of Spockish new interesting kind of ideas around how we want to feel kind of coming through at this time. At 3:28, we're going to get the moon conjunct Pluto, and this is like the opportunity to get deep with it, right? This is also the opportunity to really, really, really maybe detach and eliminate, and like to throw off something that we have like been processing through the day, that we're like, all right, now it's just time to get rid of it. I definitely think, Pluto wants elimination. That's what it does. There is like an obsessive thing here too. This is definitely when I think about like in mundane charts, the moon is people. And Pluto has definitely power to Aquarius, the people to the group. This is a very, very power to the people sort of moment, and especially because it does also light up that trine from the moon to Uranus as well, right? So there's just kind of this translation that's happening from the moon coming into that trine with Uranus and then conjuncting Pluto, all very, very close to each other, literally within minutes of time. We are going to get Mars by quintile Neptune. I think this feels like kind of dreamy, really trying to add a creative flow into our desires and what we want to get accomplished. There's really something here. I mean, they're both ruled by Mars. Mars has something to do here, right? Mars in Scorpio, definitely still it's at home. And then that Neptune in Aries is ruled by that Mars in Scorpio. So we know that the Mars in Scorpio is very important here. And maybe it's almost like it knows how it wants to go about fulfilling its mission or a dream or vision or illusion or even delusion. It knows how it wants to do that, and it just comes to it very, very naturally. That is the end of the day. It's 4:15. I think that there's really something, it feels, biquintiles and quintiles are kind of mystical aspects anyways. There's like a talent, but there's something almost, it feels like spiritual warrior-ishness, for better or for worse, right? Depending on how you want to look at spirituality or religion or anything like that, kind of moment here that has the ability to be expressed here. And those are the aspects for October 1st. Thursday, October 2nd is Jupiter's day. Jupiter is in Cancer, ruled by that moon in Aquarius, so there could be a little bit less like super emotionality and a little bit more detached, certainly. Jupiter days are really good for higher learning, for travel, for publishing, for engaging with philosophical texts or thought exercises with friends. It's a good day to be generous, right? It's a good day to engage with your various version of spirituality as well. That's all Jupiterian sort of things. All right, so 1:28 a.m. we get the moon square Mars, so a cranky aspect can feel a bit spicy, a bit angry, a bit fired up, in kind of like a cold calculating sort of way. And so hopefully everybody is more or less pretty asleep for this time. It can feel like a crisis, and you're frustrated and angry and wanting to move forward in some sort of way but cannot, that sort of thing. So hopefully this aspect can miss you. We're going to get 6:41 a.m. the moon trine the sun. This is kind of like it feels very playful, kind of happy energy, very social energy, kind of on the lighter end of things. I love this energy for like, yeah, I can do this. I'm going to go and get this done. I'm going to go and be creative. The moon by quintile Venus, I think there's a little bit more of that too. The moon by quintile Venus is very interesting because I really do think that it feels like, whatever I'm engaging in is kind of like making things more beautiful and benefiting, my community in some sort of way. It could definitely be, it's a pleasant little energy, nothing too major about it. We're going to get the moon quintile Chiron, and I think this just makes us a little bit more empathetic and sensitive in like a good way, right? And intuitively sensitive to the needs of other people. Venus sesqui-square Pluto is going to happen at 2:19 p.m. I mean, really, this energy is really floating with us for the whole day. And this could bring some interesting dynamics of frustration inside of the power and control dynamics that we have inside of our relationships, certainly. Or there could be some sort of frustration having to do with how we engage with art, how we are using our money or resources. And certainly, I think it just feels like, oh, I really want to do this thing, right? I really want to perfect in this way. And like, I'm hearing that I have to like get rid of something and I don't want to. And I feel really, really gross about that. And it just doesn't feel fantastic to me. And this energy, because it's a sesqui square, it's considered a minor aspect, but I really do think it's like just kind of floating in the background. Like with that Venus very close to the south node, it does not perfect today, it perfects the next day. Venus wants to kind of like maybe do some old stuff in a new way, or wants to eliminate stuff that like is really like in the muck of things. Virgo has to do with fine details, it has to do with like analysis, and maybe it's like releasing something around, it's just releasing of Venusian and Virgo things, maybe like perfecting or the kind of thoughts that we have around like needing to be perfect, perfectly beautiful, to appear very put together. It's an interesting energy because there is a sense of release here. Venus has to release something here, but it's really not feeling so great about doing it, and maybe feeling kind of psychologically like intense about this release because of the sesqui square to Pluto. And then we get the moon quincunx Venus, and that's going to happen at 7:28 p.m. This is the last aspect of the day, and we need to make some sort of emotional adjustment around the things that we value, around the things that we are, getting our hands dirty with and doing the work to make something more beautiful. This is, maybe having to make some sort of adjustment around how we are functioning inside of relationships. And certainly because we know that Venus and Virgo can be a little bit critical, maybe it's like we heard some sort of criticalness turned towards ourselves, whether we turned it towards ourselves or somebody else turned it towards us, and we like, oh, I do need to change that. I do need to release that. I do need to make this adjustment here, right? So that all to say is I don't necessarily think that this day feels super wonderful in terms of all of the things that we want to happen in terms of love, money, friendship, beauty, harmony, music, all of the Venusian topics, because Venus is kind of having some interesting things going on for it, especially because it's so close to that south node as well. Friday, October 3rd is Venus's day. We have Venus in exile, as in her fall. She's away from places that she loves. She feels a little bit under-resourced, perhaps just doesn't have all of the normal resources that it would use, to do all of the Venusian things, right? Which is like harmonizing, making more beautiful. With a Venus in Virgo, it kind of takes things apart and separates the good from the bad in order to make things more perfect or more beautiful. Could utilize analysis and criticalness in order to make things more beautiful or harmonizing or joining, right? Today, especially today, Venus is kind of in a challenged position. Venus is conjoined the South Node and was conjoining the South Node yesterday as well. But when a planet comes and conjoins the South Node, there's usually some sort of topic around release, right? There's something here that needs to be released around either maybe it's like unrealistic beauty standards, or the criticalness that we have towards ourselves and how we look or how we feel. There could be some sort of letting go that has to do with it's interesting, like in my brain, I'm like maiden energy, right? Because Virgo is the maiden, Maiden, and Venus is women, right? And so there's something about the past. It could be also about information about women from the past that kind of comes up at this time. I think that the energy feels pretty cranky, pretty challenged, especially because Venus is still very close to that sesqui-square to Pluto. So there's something very intense here, and that needs to kind of be purged and let go of. Now, we also have the moon quincunx Jupiter at 6:23 a.m. So we're going to need to make some sort of maybe adjustment around our goals, maybe some sort of adjustment around the things that we have held to be like our philosophy and how we want to go forward. There could also be this kind of exuberance, over exuberance, that kind of results into a sense of anxiety. So there is a caution here to not go and overdo things today. We have Mercury opposite Chiron. Now the opposition is a culmination, it is an awareness, and there could be some sort of conversation that happens that really brings our wounds into an awareness, and this could be words that are, I don't know, when I think of the opposition, I usually think of like first house, seventh house stuff, right? Aries, Libra, me versus you. And so it's like maybe one person's really trying to connect and the other person's kind of doing the wounding. A awareness that like maybe this person isn't good for you could also come up at this time. This could be feeling, very psychologically sensitive and a little bit fraught with, this is how I wanted to go forward in this conversation with you, but that's not going to work here. That kind of feeling. Then at 11:13 a.m., we get the moon sextile Chiron, which is interesting because it's like maybe this awareness of some sort of wound or hurt or harm has happened, and now there's an opportunity to do a little bit of the emotional work to maybe self-regulate, get to a better place. Maybe some of our empathy turns on as a way to kind of deal with this culmination point. And then at 11:15, we're going to get moon trine Mercury, which gives us the ability to really speak about the things that we are feeling, right? There is kind of a detachment moment here, and maybe when I think about the fact that the moon is going to go into Pisces later in the day, it's almost like I can speak about these things, and then after speaking about having these realizations, having this confrontation with our wound, with our pain, when the moon shifts, now we go into the really sensitive feeling space, right? It's almost like, oh yeah, that's not that big of a deal, and then you find yourself sobbing on the couch later because it was a big deal. We're going to get the moon sesqui-squared the sun. This can also feel a bit frustrating. With all of the aspects of the day, I do think that we're able to get stuff done. I just don't think it necessarily feels very good. We're going to get the moon entering Pisces around 7:07 p.m. We do get a pretty long void period from about 11:15 all the way until 7:07 p.m. So in all of the ways that maybe we were feeling a bit cut open, a bit raw, a bit sensitive, now we have some void time to be dealing with that, and then kind of the vibe shifts, right? We're not able to take on new things and new endeavors. We need to do some processing here in this moment. We're going to get the moon square Uranus. This is going to happen at 9:06 p.m. and this can be some sort of emotional shock. This can feel like some sort of crisis with new information that has come forward. There could be a kind of needing to go with the flow here around whatever comes up at this time. And I say that because of the mutability of the square, right? We have the moon in sensitive, deeply feeling Pisces, and a visionary even, squaring up with Uranus and Gemini, which is like very quick, it's quick new ways of thinking and processing and talking and things like that. And so these things are just not jiving, but we just kind of have to go with the flow. And it could feel like we all of a sudden have to really shift our perspective based on whatever information is coming forward at the time. And we're feeling, understandably very moon and Pisces about it, pretty sensitive. Yeah. So that, I think this day feels sensitive, ouchy. Like we thought we had it all handled and then we didn't. And now we feel, and here we are. Saturday, October 4th is Saturn's day. We have Saturn in Pisces, still retrograde, and Saturn is a taskmaster. It's the limit. It is the wall. It is the thing that says stop or no, right? The idea of Saturn being in Pisces, there's a little bit of a confusion around what it's trying to maybe put some sort of limit on or some sort of border or boundary on. But all things considered, I think that Saturn's Day, are good days to try to kind of check some things off on your task list, on your bigger task list, the things that are, your responsibilities to take care of. Another key word for Saturn is responsibilities. And, one of the reasons why I always mention what the days are, what the planetary days are, is that we can use these planetary days as ways to kind of keep our lives organized so that we know, like, okay, I do my tasks, the tasks that keep me kind of here on this material plane, my responsibilities that I've said yes to, I do those things on Saturday, right? And it's not to say that we don't do those for the rest of the week, but it's like, it gives us a framework from which to operate from. So that's why I mentioned the planetary days, just as an aside. We don't have a ton of aspects today, but I do think that we are going to feel some kind of get up and go and is some exuberance that are happening in the morning. And I say that because at 8:45 a.m. and 9:36 a.m., so in that, 8:30 to 9:30 kind of period, we get the moon sesqui-square Jupiter and also moon trine Mars. So this kind of feels like we just really want to forge ahead and push. There is a little bit of a caution because of the sesqui-square to Jupiter to just like not go overboard, right? And with that moon trine Mars, especially because it's, watery, quiet signs and just kind of like forge ahead, I think we just have to be cautious around how much we want to push. It's also very sensitive because of those water signs. I think that it's almost like still waters run deep kind of feeling here. We are going to get 3:42 p.m. We get the moon quincunx the sun. Sorry about this, all of the noise. It's a very noisy day today. Moon quincunx the sun, that can just kind of feeling a bit anxious, a bit not right, incongruent. Things aren't quite gelling in the ways that we would want them to. How we feel and how we are, it's like things just kind of don't line up how we would want them to. Moon sesqui-square Mercury is going to happen around 4:25 p.m. And I think there's just like a caution here around like how we choose to communicate and how we choose to express ourselves. Moon in Pisces is very sensitive. There can be themes of victimhood can come up here. And the reason why I kind of bring up one of the shadowy ways that the moon can operate is because of that sesqui-square to Mercury. The Mercury in Libra really wants to be in union with another person, to have these conversations back and forth, and wants to relate to others. And I just think that there's something here that says don't fall into victim mentality or try one-upsmanship and the oppression Olympics in our conversations with other people, because it could end up really kind of hurting people more than it could be in helping or having the positive and constructive conversations that you might want to have with people today. And I also think that that is a part of this story because we have Mercury quincunx Saturn at 5:32 p.m. This is going to be happening at 27 degrees, 27 minutes of Libra and Pisces, respectively. I think that we need to make some sort of adjustment around the ways that we are processing and communicating. And maybe that has to do with the sort of work we're doing. It has to do with the sort of structures that we're trying to create, the things that we're trying to achieve. Certainly, there can be some issues with communication needing to make it could be a sudden adjustment, like, oh, I thought we were going over here, but really it's not. This aspect, this quincunx, this adjusting aspect is kind of engirdled in a way, which I think is really fascinating. It's in the shape of Virgo. The quincunx is a shape of Virgo. And then we also have, Mercury in Libra is being ruled by that Venus in Virgo. And then we have Saturn in Pisces, which to me, I think about the exaltation ruler. There's something about relationship here. There's something about our values. There's something about our belief here that we're trying to maybe communicate that we have to make some sort of change to. Regardless, I think this can feel like a very frustrating energy to have to work through, and it's going to more or less hold for the rest of the day because Mercury isn't as fast as the moon, certainly, so it's not going to go as fast as a moon aspect. So really I think there's something about really being interested about the ways that we're thinking and expressing ourselves to other people and how we're expressing what we want to do and how we want to achieve it, how we want to get it done, our belief in ourselves to be able to get that done and to make the reasonable adjustments and changes that we need to, so that it's a little bit more true, it's a little bit more real, it's a little bit more cold, it's a little bit more essential in that moment, is kind of how it feels to me. And that's really the last aspect of the day that is kind of, it's like the cherry on the cake. I think that this day is very much about communication and its limit. And maybe it's the limit on how it can get things done, especially because we really want to get things done. We just want to be careful to not overdo it, especially on this day. Sunday, October 5th is the Sun's day. We have the Sun in Libra. In Mercury's bounds, and we have Mercury very, very close to leaving the sign of Libra, but it really brings up this sense of really, really interested in being in communication, being in unity, being in relationship with you, meeting you in the middle, right? Organizing ourselves to kind of go across the aisles and have some sort of, talks of peace even. Now, that's all ruled by that Venus in Virgo, which is still very close to the South Node. Releasing things around Venusian things, topics of beauty and women, ideas of femininity, perfect femininity, criticalness, self-criticalness around how we maybe appear or look or seem, or how we are able to be in union with other people. We did just have that adjusting energy from Mercury to Saturn, really asking us to make some sort of adjustments in how we are communicating with other people around what we're trying to achieve, perhaps. There's not a lot of major aspects of the day, but we do start with our first major aspect being at 4:33 a.m. We have the moon opposite Venus. So we need to remember with oppositions that these are, the opposition has the nature of Saturn. So there's some sort of, limit or no or awareness, sort of moment, right? Where something becomes like a reality, a culmination point. Now, this is like how we feel, our sensitivities, our habits, kind of coming into a opposition, not necessarily squaring off, but an opposition, a fight even with Venus. And when I think about like Moon Venus contacts, they're usually about pleasure. They're usually wanting to like really connect to like the feminine principle, femininity, and things like that. And so something could be feeling kind of off. When we have Moon Venus contacts, just like Moon Jupiter contacts, there's an indulgence factor here. And it could be that we're feeling out of sorts, and so we reach for the sweet thing, right? We reach for the thing that's going to make us feel good, but it doesn't really do that. This could bring up, issues with women, just issues with Venusian things, issues with feelings inside of relationship as well. We are going to get the moon trine Jupiter at 10:15 a.m. And again, this is an indulgence thing. This is wanting to engage in things that bring us pleasure, things that make us feel comfortable, things that make us feel in tune, right? This definitely Moon Jupiter contacts, especially by trine, is like this circuitry of, it's almost like two women in a room looking at each other, and they're just as addicted as the other person. They go, exactly. And like, no matter what you say, no matter what you do, I'm right here with you. Like, let's just keep going. So just be careful in your indulgences. We have the moon opposite Venus and also the moon trine Saturn. So there's stuff here coming up, Moon sesquisquare Mars, I think, could bring up some intensities and passions. Some anger stuff could come up at this moment too. And when we hit at 5:29 p.m., we get the moon conjunct Saturn. This is feeling kind of, it can be isolated. It can be feeling like you're inside of your emotional authority. I know that this is how I feel. This is mine. I'm fine dealing with my own stuff. This could be feeling kind of apart from everyone else. When I think about the moon in Pisces, is very, it's like about osmosis. It just kind of, everything gets absorbed into a moon in Pisces. It just feels all of these things. And when it comes up and it meets up with Saturn, there's like a limit to this. And so maybe it could be feeling kind of cut off from those sensorial, emotional things. And now it's just kind of like, ooh, I don't know what to do with this feeling here. At that point, we are going to get the moon going void, and then it will come out of void at 9:47 p.m. when we get a distinct vibe shift when the moon goes into Aries. But just before that, at 8:25, we get the moon quincunx Mercury. So there could be some sort of conversation that happens, or some sort of, we need to make some sort of emotional shift in how we are maybe internalizing something because of a conversation that has happened, or some sort of thought that was thunk. Is that a word? Thunk? Anyways, there is, this also means that like how we're feeling and how we're thinking are just not really working together. And so we're going to have to sit kind of in our discomfort and make some sort of adjustment somewhere, somehow. Moon goes into Aries, and we got our spicy moon. I love this moon. I love a moon in Aries. I have a moon in Gemini, so like we just really get along pretty well usually. But the moon in Aries really is instinctually feeling things very quickly. It's processing very quickly, and where there could have been some sort of moment of resolve, right? This is mine. Now it goes into Aries. It's like, I'm going to take care of it all on my own, right? The sign Aries is very much number one, right? I'm the only one. I got to, take care of it myself. It's very independent sort of moon. And so I think maybe we're just kind of feeling like we can just go out on our own, kind of break free and be independent in the ways that we really kind of have maybe needed to, especially because for the 2.5 days before that, we had the moon in Pisces. It's just very like everything everywhere all at once kind of moment. At 10:28 p.m., we're going to get the moon conjunct Neptune in Aries. And this is going to still be on a world point. I'm very interested to see like kind of what world topics around like visions and dreams that, maybe some of that has to do with military, that has to do with, the soldier, has to do with our visionaries, has to do with our leadership, kind of coming out and like being kind of known to us in this moment. And then we have 11:35 p.m. moon sextile Uranus. This kind of brings an excitement into the air. This can bring, ways of being kind of genius and how we're feeling, and those things like really working together in a nice way. It's a lovely working energy. I really think that once we get into probably the late afternoon to evening, we're able to kind of, and actually really this whole day is kind of productive. I think we're able to just kind of get through the day. It doesn't necessarily all feel the best that it could feel, but I would say try to harness that moon trine Jupiter. Don't eat a pint of ice cream, but certainly maybe sit inside of your feeling and senses and have this moment of like calm, right? Have this moment of hope, maybe. And then when we get to that moon conjunct Neptune, really engage in like maybe some spiritual pursuits or imagination and creativity. It's very late at night, but like, who cares? Time is an illusion. And then with that sextile to Uranus, there's just kind of like new ways of being that are open and accessible to us in that moment. Monday, October 6th is the moon's day, and we have a full moon today in Aries. That full moon is going to be happening at 8:47 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, but we do have a couple of things that we should talk about happening before that full moon fully comes to light. Full moons are culmination periods, and so we can be feeling pretty pregnant with the sense of something is kind of coming up to the surface during this time, during the moon coming to its full spot, right? And once the moon went into Aries, I think we really kind of turned our emotions and our senses into a more independent and martial sort of feeling, a very instinctive sort of feeling as well. Now, the themes of the moon being in Aries opposite the sun in Libra is very first and seventh house, right? Not to do ABC stuff, but it's very much a me versus us or a me versus you kind of thing. These are the principles of love versus war, war being Aries and love being Libra. This is individualism versus partnership, right? And maybe there's something that has come up with, or is coming up, right, as this moon comes to its full fruition, that we realize the ways that we need to set out on our own, perhaps. At 12:03 a.m., we do get the moon sextile Pluto, and so I think it does give us this ability to go a little bit deeper inside of our emotional processes to know what we need to be releasing. And we need to also remember that the full moon is a releasing point as well. And so we have this meeting of the moon to Pluto, and Pluto is kind of like, hey, here's this opportunity to eliminate something before you go into this full moon moment a few hours later. At 9:40 a.m., Mercury is going to enter Scorpio. This is a very penetrating, very deeply thinking and processing Mercury. Maybe the topics of conversation becomes more live or die, perhaps. There's an intensity of communication and speech and thinking, just in general. There also, this, because it's co-present with Mars as well, it's almost as if what we are talking about when we're thinking of really has to do with everything having to do with martial subjects, right? Strategy. There's a lot of strategy kind of thought or thinking that I'm having here when I think about the Mercury and Mars co-present together in Scorpio. Now, we do get the moon quincunx Mars at 1:54 p.m. And what's interesting is that they're both ruled by the same planet. And so again, I think this has to do with maybe emotionally adjusting our strategies, the ways that we want to move forward and the ways that we want to take. We're going to get Mercury quincunx Neptune at 3:53 p.m., which really kind of speaks to maybe having to make some sort of processing shift around the sorts of dreams that we have for ourselves. These are both planets that are ruled by that Mars in Scorpio. So again, this is about the strategy. How do we go and do the thing that we want to do in order to get it done? Like, how do we diligently create that strategy? How do we not become overwhelmed with the sense of like our goal or vision? How do we not bring in, delusional aspects, that Neptune kind of thing? And maybe we have a little bit of anxiety in how we're going to kind of fulfill the promises that we've made and the ways that we want to go forward. That full moon, like I mentioned earlier, happens at 8:47 p.m. And so whenever I think about full moons, I always think about like boils being ready to pop or burst, or, things come up. They're fully bloomed. We are aware of these things now, right? And because this lunation is in Aries, congrats, we have now hit the mark where I think we can safely say we're out of eclipse season, which hopefully will calm down some of the things that are going on, because it's been a ride, certainly. But we definitely have, these themes of me versus you, me versus us, everything having to do with how we operate inside a partnership. This can also have to do with certainly open enemies. And this can just be the themes of love and war, right? We know where we are in the world right now. We know that we are certainly dealing with those themes all the time and pretty intensely. I don't think that there's a day where any of us who are very aware of what's going on in the world wonder if we are going to just burst into war. Now, the moon is in the mansion that says that it is a possibility to approach a king and to make some peace. It's called, Al-Butane, right? No. Yes. It's Al-Butane, the little belly. And this has the nature of Mercury and Saturn, which I think is interesting because it's like being able to speak inside of your authority, to be able to ask for the things that are like real and just, and it also speaks of being able to reconcile, which is interesting considering the full moon nature of things. So it's almost like, with the awareness that we have, how do we go about making some sort of reconciliation? All that to say, though, is you're going to want to pay attention to where 14 degrees 8 minutes is happening in your chart with the Aries and Libra axis, right? So if, for instance, you are a Gemini rising, that is going to be pretty much happening in your 11th house. Your 11th house and your 5th house. So this could be around, art in your fans. It could be around creativity and community, some sort of awareness, right, of how perhaps you want to go your own way, but it's also calling you to this other place. So all that being said, we do get that Mercury Mars co-presence in Scorpio, which I think is really helping that moon in Aries know the direction in which it wants to go with the information that it has now. And we also have, the forming. It's pretty close. It's going to form over the next few days. Well, a while. I think it's in the rest of October. Jupiter is forming a trine to Saturn, really, being able to put our goals into, action, being able to set up strategically these like beautiful new structures and dreams and hopes and ambition. I think that Jupiter is also helping Mars be a little bit nicer than perhaps it would necessarily be, because it is in a dominating trine. It's kind of in a sign-based trine coming over it. But yeah, I think that we have an opportunity to realize what we're fighting for. And that is what feels the most apparent to me in these moments. How do you want to go forward? How can you claim your individuality while still operating inside of partnership and friendship and relationship, romantic or otherwise? How do we do the work to maintain our individuality while still working with other people? How do we press forward into taking action to find peace? Tuesday, October 7th is Mars's day. We have Mars happy as a clam in Scorpio, very strategic, very stealthy, very determined, couldn't be a little bit stubborn, but definitely has the drive and desire to go after it wants in very kind of determined, detailed, even obsessive sort of ways. Now, I think today is very much trying to come down from the full moon of last night. I think that there can feel like a little bit of crisis today, emotional crisis and anxiety, maybe around the things that we realize that we want to get done, or what that story was that happened that started with eclipse season starting and then kind of wrapping itself up with this full moon, this awareness moment, right, that happened yesterday. 2:41 a.m. we have Mercury quincunx Uranus, and this could bring some sort of like kind of shocking stimulation to how we're thinking, how we're speaking, maybe how we're talking to people is a little bit erratic. There could be something kind of exciting here that if we try to remain flexible, not saying that a Mercury in Scorpio can necessarily has flexibility on its mind, but I think that there's something here, Uranus is really trying to break free and to liberate Mercury in some sort of way through maybe some sort of quick adjustment, kind of pulling the rug out. Like, this is what you thought, this isn't what you thought. Here's this new piece of information here. Mercury square Pluto is going to happen at 7:40 a.m. and this can feel like a psychological crisis. Certainly, I think that this feels like crisis. I feel like this is like the crisis of consciousness. I can't believe that I thought this. These are the things that I need to like complete. There's something here that feels really intense. This is a fixed square. It's extremely intense kind of moment. So there is an intensity of thought happening today, a spiciness of that moon in Aries trying to wrap up its time, right? We have the moon quincunx Venus at 9:58 a.m. We're needing to make some sort of emotional, intuitive sort of habit adjustment around the things that maybe we value, or the things that we love, or how we're operating inside of relationship, how we're working with other people. There could be some sort of moment of having some sort of criticism, right? I always think of that Venus and Virgo is so good at seeing those fine details And the moon in Aries doesn't care about any of that. It just wants to feel. But like Venus is imposing upon it through this sudden adjustment kind of moment that says no, but like you have to maybe take in this little bit of criticism so that you can go forward in a better way, especially because right around that same period of time, well, later in the afternoon we have the moon conjunct Chiron, which also I think is sensitivity all around. Moon square Jupiter at 11:23 a.m. We got to be careful not to go overboard and to take actions in ways that are like very overboard, right? There's a kind of an exuberance, like I'm going to go do this kind of moment. I think that this day feels like we're just trying to push through and things don't feel quite right. So we might overextend. We do get a vibe shift. For better or for worse, right, at 10:12 p.m., we're going to get the moon entering Taurus. Now, the moon loves being in Taurus. It loves being an exalted Taurus because it's really all about like, oh, the pleasure, right? A Taurian word is very much about like sensorial pleasures, right? This is a moon that really wants to be safe. It wants to be secure. It wants to hold on to the things that it has, and it can be very survival oriented. So even though the moon in Taurus is exalted, at its shadow, there is something about survivalism that happens here, a need to survive despite all else. There's that rigidity and that fixity, holding on to, emotionally holding on to, like my precious, my feelings, instead of like kind of letting those things go. And we need to know that when we have the moon going into a fixed sign, it's going to interact with Pluto, right? When the moon goes into Taurus or with Scorpio, it's going to square up with Pluto, bringing some sort of emotional crisis that we're feeling. And so even though we love a moon in Taurus, initially we know that it is going to go and have this square. So we're going to feel probably kind of maybe scared of like what we have, like how do we hold on to what we have? A moon in Taurus can be very still kind of individual, right? But individual, but kind of like stuck in its own ways. And with that square, it's kind of going, the Pluto's kind of going like, I need you to drop some of those things. I need you to be a part of community. I need you to be a part of the world and not be so concerned with what you individually can retain here in order to feel safe and secure. Because right now, I think one of the things that we have to remember, all of us, is that I'm not free until everybody else is free. So even though I might have to sacrifice or give up something, like literally stop, doing something in order to create the safety and security for more people, I think that's important. And so, Pluto is asking the moon to give up something, and it's through some sort of crisis. So after that square that will perfect tomorrow, in the middle of the night, I'm hoping that it'll feel a little bit cuter. But I think that for all purposes, even though we really love the moon in Taurus, it's got some rough territory to go through now, with Pluto being in Aquarius at the beginning, and also with Mercury being there, and also Mars. It has to traverse a lot before it can get free to feel cozy and to feel safe again. So if you're feeling a bit unnerved today, a little bit of some electricity in the sky and how we're thinking, some psychological gears grinding, some desire to find and secure one's security and safety and indulgence in those ways, it's not all pleasant, certainly. I would say definitely try to utilize these aspects to kind of get to the root of things, to do the Mercury and Scorpio thing, right? Which is to like penetrate deeply into the mind's processes, to figure out what's really going on. I think that's kind of all we can do today, because there isn't a lot of pleasantries today. Hey, thank you for listening to today's Astro Weather with me. I'm Sydney. As a reminder, I'm always open to seeing both new and my beloved returning clients. My website is ddastrology.com, that is D as in dog, D as in dog, astrology.com, to check me out and just click the email buttons in order to schedule with me. If you're into a more conversational feel with your podcast and content, I have a podcast called BS Astrology with my fellow Mercurial Mommy Bender, and we put out episodes every Sunday for the week. Just search BS Astrology on YouTube or wherever you enjoy listening to your podcast, including Spotify, Audible, and more. Have a good day.